Look, it was one of the warmest on record. It was also one of the worst snow seasons on record. Now, that was a picture from Perisher taken yesterday. Now, late August is peak season. It's normally when the snow depth reaches its highest point. You can see there is very little natural snow cover. For most of our resorts, it was the worst snow season in nearly 20 years. Now, let's have a look at our capitals. This is ranking them compared to historical data. Every single capital, apart from Perth, had a temperature in the top 3 of records. Now, for Hobart and Adelaide, it was the warmest winter on record with more than 120 years worth of data. For Brisbane, for Sydney, for Canberra, it was the second warmest winter on record. And then for Melbourne and Darwin, they saw their equal third warmest winter on record, Ros.
So as we look towards spring then, what are the main climate drivers for the rest of the year?
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Now, let's start with what's happening in the Indian Ocean. We have what's called a positive Indian Ocean dipole that's developed. We've got cold waters off the coast of Indonesia and there is warm waters off the Horn of Africa. Now, that pattern changes the wind regime across the Indian Ocean. It leads to winds blowing from the cold waters to the warm waters, so blowing away from Australia. And that takes cloud and moisture and rain also away from Australia. Now let's go to the Pacific Ocean. We've been talking for months about a developing El Nino. Well, it's still developing. We clearly have this warm tongue of water here along the equator. So historically, this is what happens during positive IODs and El Ninos. Looking at past events, El Nino brings below average winter and spring rain to the eastern parts of Australia. That's the red shading. While a positive Indian Ocean dipole brings below average rain to much of northern, central and southern parts of Australia during the winter and spring. But when you have both of these climate drivers active, well, that only enhances that dry signal for many parts of the country, Ros.
So Tom, with that in mind, what's the latest forecast for Australia?
Okay, let's take a look at the latest Bureau forecast. It only came out a few hours ago. So this is the forecast for spring, the chance of above medium rainfall. Well, you can see it's likely to be drier than normal across almost the entire country. The only area where there's a slight wet signal is the northern part of WA. Now, the darkest shading here shows where it's less than a 20% risk of above medium rain, meaning a greater than 80% chance of that rain being below average. And that covers much of Queensland, Victoria, southern South Australia, and also the southwest corner of WA. And then finally, the chance of above medium maximum temperatures. Well, it's a greater than 80% risk of being warmer than normal through essentially the whole country, apart from small parts of northern Queensland. So with those climate drivers being active, get ready for a hot and dry spring.